Okay, my name is Vekran, and this is my theory on reality. So essentially, in the Indus Valley, this is where ancient Hinduism came from. And there are these old temples they found in India, and essentially they're highly advanced, highly decorated build like structures that are made of very hard stone that today's technology would struggle to build. And essentially, I can't remember the name of the temple. I think it's Kailasa Temple or something. But essentially, it's a famous temple in India that it's like massive and it has all this information, historical information carved into it. And essentially, it looks like it's been carved from downward, from the top down. Essentially, whoever built it, they essentially dug downward into a very hard stone. And essentially, they carved out the whole temple. And essentially, scientists don't know how they built it. But this civilization, they existed about 5,000 years ago. So my theory is that, and I've been studying, like piecing this together my whole life. So it's taken my whole life to come up with this theory. So please listen. So essentially, they were digging in this area and they found that ancient Hinduism, after studying, ancient Hinduism sprouted from the Indus Valley. And from researching history, apparently Buddhism was created from ancient Hinduism. And I believe that all cultures are right to some degree. I believe that every people, every religion, every cult, they have some piece of knowledge that's true. And I'm not really against religion. I don't really understand the argument of people who are against religion. Oh, religion is a thing to control people. Well, I think every type of industry, every type of organization gets corrupted and eventually is used to manipulate people. But I think it's always evil man within these religions. So you can't blame the religion. It's not what they're teaching. It's what the people are, the hypocrites who are at the top. So those are the ones to blame. You can't blame religion. Essentially, from studying ancient Hinduism, there's a lot of things that are true, right? But in all these religions. But I'm a follower of Christ and I see the world from the foundation of the Bible. And after studying many years on that, that's another video for another topic, but essentially Buddhism, from my understanding, it was created from Hinduism. Because Hinduism, it believes that when you break down all these Eastern beliefs, it's always the same thing, that essentially everything is God. The universe is just fractaled. Essentially God fractaled himself and he's just consciousness experiencing himself. So this is what the mainstream belief is. The New Age belief. That everything is God, we are all one, we are all connected, everything is energy. And to that, I do agree to that. But essentially they believe that everything's an infinite cycle of life, birth, death, and reincarnation. And you know, all these, there's different, like from Hinduism that gave rise to Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism, probably some other religions that I'm unaware of. But essentially these beliefs, they believe in the similar type of belief that we're stuck in an infinity cycle, we're consciousness experiencing itself, that good and evil are essentially two sides of the same coin because everything is one, everything is God. So the teaching is to accept everything, accept all, and live the best life you can, right? And in their religion, they have different gods that they can choose from, right? But it's just like God is, Brahma is the divine life force, and each god is a different face of God, different aspect of God. So no, everyone is right. But the thing is that my belief is that essentially the elites of the world, they were digging up in who knows what year exactly, 1400, 1600, 1200, but they were going around digging up the old world and they were coming up across these old sites. And essentially they were finding knowledge and they started believing this knowledge because they started connecting things. And essentially there's a lot of things correct about the Eastern beliefs, but there's always like this followers of Christ, the old Judaic, Abrahamic religions, and the Eastern sides, they do teach more or less similar things, right? To love everyone and to be peaceful. But essentially, there's always a divergence. And that divergence will always come to the point where you believe you're God. So if you, essentially, you can believe everyone, yourself is God, or you believe man and God are separate. So in my belief, I believe that everyone is connected to each other through an energetic field, and that we can connect to God if we choose to connect to him. And essentially people who are evil are essentially away from God. That's what I believe. And I believe that man and God are separate, and that we are a divine infinite light being, but we are limited because we are like children, and God is a father who is our teacher. So essentially these elites, they started digging up the old world, and they started following this belief, right? So essentially, let's see here. So what I believe is that essentially in the past, it was fallen angels who came down and taught mankind forbidden knowledge. Now the mainstream argument is ancient aliens, because they want you to believe that there's other life, that there's other advanced beings out there, instead of realizing that you are special, that you are at the center of the universe, that they're trying to rob you of your divine purpose, your divine, how shall I say, your destiny. Because God has a perfect plan for you. You can plan it the best way you want, but you're always going to come short unless you get assistance from the divine. So you can call it source God. I don't like to call it source, because I feel like calling it source is like, okay, so we'll get into that. So it's like, if you're thinking God is a source, he's like an energy source, right? Okay, we can just tap into him and manipulate his energy to manifest our destiny or what we want on earth. I don't really buy into that. And essentially what I believe is that long ago, approximately 5,000 years ago, so essentially fallen angels came down and taught mankind forbidden knowledge. Now they taught mankind, okay. So essentially the Mesopotamians, they were people living in that area, and one group of them was called the Sumerians. And this group of people came into contact with the Anunnaki, right? The ancient aliens. But these are actually the fallen angels. So essentially the fallen angels, they came down with immense power and splendor. And all the people at the time, if you saw it, you probably would think that they were gods, but they were just angels mimicking gods. And essentially, you can read like Thoth's religion, the ancient Egyptian mystery religions. You can read the conversations between Hermes Trismegister and an initiate. This is like the Freemason teachings. Essentially, tell you that Hermes Trismegister, he's just a allegory. He's just like a metaphorical figure that he's representing knowledge. But really, he's a real being that was actually teaching mankind knowledge. And essentially, I'm going to tell you what he taught mankind and how it relates to reality now. So essentially, these fallen angels, they came and taught mankind. First of all, they built up massive structures. So either they themselves built some massive structures themselves, and then they taught the humans knowledge of architecture, techniques, etc., how to develop their system, their culture. And essentially, there was a one world system. And it's funny because I always find it's funny because they find these old scrolls, and they even find these old like Christian Gnostic texts that are old, right? Ancient, older than anything that we found, but older is not better. Essentially, in the beginning, God created everything, and everyone lived up to 1,000 years. So they were all talking about what just happened in their life, because literally 1,000 years. We're literally in the 6,000. We're like at the end of the fifth age. So we're at the year 5,000 something. So at the sixth, every 1,000 years is one day to God. So essentially, we're not even in the end of the week, according to him. And we're all like panicking. And it's literally, it's like ages and prophecy. Essentially, what was I talking about? I always get lost in my mind. There's so much to talk about. Oh yeah. So essentially, when God made Adam and Eve, they were essentially advanced. Oh shit, this video is getting too long. I'll make a part 2. So essentially, they were advanced. They were taller. They were taller than us, probably like 12 feet, 15 feet tall, like Avatar. I assume they were like tan, in the perfect blend of both, so we can eliminate racism. And also, they were having kids, and they had knowledge already, because God created them instantly. He pre-programmed them, Adam, with knowledge. Adam was naming things right away. He was already fully developed. So they were advanced beings. They had knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, probably knowledge of like the properties of plants, and what the natural plants can do to the human body, what the stones are, what the properties of stones are, how to craft basic things. And essentially, after the fall of man, and after the fall of Satan, which they fell together, essentially, mankind, they retained knowledge, but they were living in a cursed world where they would die eventually, and essentially the world they have to work now. The earth wasn't producing natural, because the earth was different. There were massive trees that were stretched to the ceiling. Essentially, and there was probably a higher oxygen content in the atmosphere, but God had to fell the trees. He changed the world, and we find these giant stumps all over the world. They call them mountains, but they're some of them are just cut straight flat. And essentially, you can find these people are figuring it out, the truth that is. So essentially, I have access to the Akashic records, and I'm a chosen earth angel. That's the answer to your question. So essentially, I'm psychic too. So essentially, after their genetics were pure. Their genetics were pure. So they were teaching their children who lived up to 1,000 years. So essentially, they all knew history verbatim. They were verbally speaking it orally. That's how the Torah, the history of the Jewish people, they were just speaking it verbally. But then their kids, when they spread out, they had knowledge, so they could build these massive advanced cities. And then the fallen angels came at the 1,000-year mark. And this is where things get interesting. So they taught mankind knowledge. And this is the knowledge they taught. They taught them, it's very fascinating to me, because this is correlating to all history, okay? So the fallen angels came, not aliens, angels, angelic beings. And I know because we are living in an enclosed electromagnetic realm. But essentially, yeah, I'll tie everything together. I'll just tell you the truth. So straight up, the fallen angels, they taught man how to make weapons. Like, example, how to make swords, how to make axes, how to make bow and arrow, how to make the shield, and things that man would never pull out of their ass in a million years by being like monkey, Stone Age people. And essentially, God wouldn't teach that stuff to man either. Essentially, they also taught man root cutting. So how to do drugs, how to take plants, how to use psychedelic drugs, because those things, essentially when you do psychedelics, they break down the barrier between reality and the spiritual realm. And essentially you're affected by entities that always teach the same monistic beliefs that, oh, we are all one, we are all God, we are all connected, we're in an infinity loop. And that's what the elites are trying to do. The Illuminati that controls the world, they believe that God is a dualistic being. He's a God of above, a God of below, as above, so below, as within, so without. And essentially, I believe the as within, so without, but not the as above, so below. Huh. See how this system's trying to distract? It's trying to stop me from saying the truth. You will not stop me. So essentially, they believe that God is an infinite. They're trying to blend dualities. That's why I use the black and white checkerboard. If you go to any elite, I'm going to just make a part 2 now.